Welcome to the database systems final project video for the GNSS positioning performance monitor. This project has been done by myself. I'm Daniel Lipec, and the rest of our team, we're doing this project for our senior design as well. And our team consists of Aaron McKenna, Austin McKibben, and Derek Baker as well. So a little overview. What this site aims to do is it takes in GPS data, actually GNSS data, Global Navigation Satellite System, from four different constellations. You have GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, and Beidou. And it compares their actual positions that they're reading to what the true position that the sensor is at, and calculates the error and compares the satellites, the different systems, for accuracy. And so currently, this heat map that you see here, it shows the positions over a period of time. Currently, this one is not using our real data. It's still currently test data, just because we weren't able to get everything all put together finally. But the graphs are generated from CSV files, and we make the CSV files from the database. We just haven't gotten the scheduling for the CSV generation and everything integrated into the site on our test server at this point. Right now we are collecting data kind of simultaneously with the old system that we are replacing, which I can show you a little glimpse of the old site. This was actually a senior design project on the electrical engineering side a few years ago, and our project was to write a new code base for them because they had some issues. One thing is they were losing a significant portion of data every day, issues with the U-blocks decryption for the receivers. But this kind of gives you an idea of those heat maps. These are comparing each of the constellations, and right now one of the things is none of the graphs are interactive. They're actually all just images that are generated on the old site, and that was one of the big things we aimed to improve as well, making everything interactive, actually other than the heat maps, because we determined that it wasn't really going to be too helpful to zoom in on the heat maps. But we do have zooming implemented on our line graphs here, where you can zoom in and out. And so the graphing was done mainly by myself and Aaron. I worked a lot on the heat maps, and he helped out a little bit with that too. And then he did most of the line graph stuff, almost everything. And the only thing I really worked on those was the zooming. I ended up doing that portion. But so as you can see, you can zoom in on the graphs. You can deselect lines with these legend buttons, just clicking on there. You can also highlight the lines by hovering over it with the brush tool deselected, and it will gray out the rest, make that one pop out a little bit. And same thing can be done once you're zoomed in. That all works. The selection still works there. And yeah, right now the heat map is not very interactive because it would be kind of hard to make the visualization more useful, we thought, especially with the way that heat map is structured and how it works from the code side. But one thing that we took a little bit of time to get to work right was to get all the graphs to scale nicely to the page size, especially for trying to keep mobile users in mind. So that was something we spent some time on at the end here, trying to get all of that to work right. So right now we have all of these links up here. They actually they link to the page that will be there in the future, but those individual pages will show a more detailed breakdown of each individual constellation, There's some other data points that we collect. There's a lot of DOP points that I don't know as much about those. That's something we're getting into kind of on the second semester, is working with some of that other data that we're getting. But right now we're just kind of working on the main page. The position error is the big thing for the site. So as I mentioned earlier, currently the data that's visualized here is not our real data, because we didn't, like I said, we didn't get time to integrate everything in for at this point. But they are generated from CSVs in the same format that we generate the data from our database in. And right now, this heat map is generating off of about 110,000 data points. That was kind of to test how quick it was going to be, because we wanted to be able to show at least up to a month of data at a time. And since these are generated, on the client side, it had to make sure it would load quickly, but it does even with that data. So that was thanks to our graphing utility that we're using is d3.js, and it's been very good. There's a bit of a learning curve with it, of course. It's very minimalistic, so it's kind of, things get a little long to when you're writing the graphs, but overall it gives a lot of control, which is really what we needed. So that's nice, and everything does scale nicely to data point sizes. So that's nice as well. A little more on our technology stack. Our backend that we're using is Express. Is kind of an extension of Node. So some of our database integration was actually through things that came from Node, from npm, and that's how we did the database integration with the back end. And other than that, we are going to start adding some Bootstrap stuff on the HTML page side, but we're not quite there yet. I think there's a little bit, but not much yet. And then other than that, our data is being received from uBlock's GNSS receivers. 4 of them. We have actually a test set that we are using for our purposes right now, but there's also a set at the avionics center, and that's where the server for the main site is, and that's where we'll be collecting the data from once this project is finalized, for that goal. Currently, page design wise, we're based very much off of the old site. That's going to change as the project evolves. That was just kind of to get something there so we can test the more important stuff, the stuff that was going to take longer, like the graphing, which is really what we wanted to jump into at first, since we knew that would be more time consuming for the UI portion. So yeah, the homepage nav bar, very similar at the current moment, but that we'll clean it up, towards the end there. But now I can go through and show some of the code, how things are working behind the scenes. So first, this is just our index JS file, getting everything for Express, and this is actually where we call for our data generation, for our daily file generation. It's not scheduled yet. We will have that with a node scheduler that will have that run. I'm not sure how often we're going to do it. Maybe every few minutes, to re-update the CSVs for the previous 24 hours for the main page, and then there'll be selectable times and things for that as well. And that is generated by this function here. So we just use the Maria. Oh, I did not mention our database is we're using MariaDB. That's what they were using before, and it seemed like it was going to be easiest to port things over from that, and just keep it all the same. There really wasn't any problem with the way it was structured before. So we kept that and are using the same structure and management. So that's why we went with Maria. But using the node connector for MariaDB to connect to the database. And here's where our queries are. Right now, they are not the prettiest. I know could put some more joins in here. This was one of the files I worked on mainly, and yeah, that for because each constellation's data is currently getting pulled in a separate query. So that will be cleaned up with some joins later on. But for testing, this was just worked out a little easier, so I could make sure that I was getting all the data I was supposed to. Um, so since I'm showing you this locally, our generated CSV is not there because this is meant to run on our server where our database is housed. So on there it does generate with, this will give us a day's worth of data, and will fill this CSV. And the way that here's one of our test data files. This one, so we have the timestamp, horizontal error, vertical error, and the satellite, the constellation that we are that the data point's for, and we're putting everything in one CSV just so mainly because for the heat map it's easier to just read from one file with everything in there. But this is the basic structure of how the generated CSV looks when it is run. And currently, like I said, it's not scheduled. It's just it generates that CSV the first time you start up the server. So that will be scheduled to run periodically. So the server side generation of files will be timed and up to date with the current data to a few minutes. It's not really imperative that it's down to the second. The query does take like 10 seconds to generate the file right now, although we're currently just serving this on a Raspberry Pi. There's a much nicer server that it will go on eventually. Servers run in Debian 11, but once we get that onto the production server, it'll definitely, everything will be a little quicker. So let me So next, I'll show where the data is put in from our uBlocks receivers. This was mostly done by Austin. This was kind of his domain, was doing the uBlocks decryption and the database integration with that. So here is where we are putting in our data right now. I think this is just for the GPS constellation is what we're getting right now, and he was just making sure that all the data comes through right. I know he was getting there were some issues he was working through to make sure everything ended up right, but it looks like he got everything together, and we aren't seeming to experience that data dropout that the old version of the site was. We haven't, I don't think we've done a super extended period of data collection for testing yet, but so far so good with the data dropouts. So that's where we insert into our database our collected data. And yeah, so right now the reason I'm showing you this to you on GitHub is this is currently in a separate branch. Like I said, a lot of our stuff's kind of separate, and it's not quite all put together yet. That's kind of the next step, is getting everything integrated into each other. Austin's been working on this in a separate branch on the repository, and just for testing purposes until we're ready to integrate, which is right about now. Now that everything's kind of finished up, all the pieces are there for us to put them finally together and really get a large portion of the functionality of this website will be done at that point. So next I'll show a little bit how our graphs work. This is the code for our heat map right here. We're using D3 for that, and so right now we're reading the data here, and there's going to be a lot of SVG stuff. That's how we get the interactivity. Is all the D3 stuff is SVG elements, so that way we're able to interact with it. So here we're putting in the x-axis, y-axis, and making sure that we can translate into pixel values for everything there. This here we've got some of the axis labels, grid lines on the heat map to kind of help visualize where the data is at, and then this bullseye, the circles going out to further improve the readability. Here is where our density data is generated. This is something that was in with D3, this contour density. So I don't know exactly how it works, but it does it correctly. So I don't know how it does, how it generates it into the image, but nicely D3 did all that stuff for us. And then this here, this is for updating the graph for a new CSV without reloading the page. So our update, for some reason, the last time I tried it, it was not working on the site we have on the test server, but when I ran it locally, it does work. I don't know why that's happening, so that's going to be one of the next bugs we have to work out. But so that's there, and then the line graphs do the same. You can update them with a new CSV, and you can still zoom in and do everything there on the new data once it's been added. Right now, we're actually appending data on from what was already there with a separate CSV, so it's kind of adding them together. In case we just someone adds a certain time period, or we have like a button that's show the next week or the next set of data, the next time period. But yes, so both of those update on that, and yeah, that's the heat map does as well, or at least it does sometimes when it decides to. So like I mentioned, the heat map was something I worked on for the most part, and Aaron did as well. And then the line graphs were mostly his domain, except for the brushing, but just a little bit. But for by and large, that was his project. So I'll show you a little bit in there. I'm not quite as familiar. Vertical and horizontal are fairly identical. It's just easier to do them in separate files. We might try and get it into one that just we change the axis labels and stuff. But it's right now it's just kind of easier to do it this way. So he's in here. Add the x-axis, y-axis. We're getting the colors for the different lines for each one. So if we end up adding more lines, we have more color combos that work nicely together in case we need more. Here's stuff for the legend, adding that, and then the click listener for deselecting and selecting the lines. In here is where the lines generated, some stuff for the mouse over, highlighting, and everything. And then in here is where we initialize the brush element, the brush tool for the zooming. So in here, we add it up here. We add the SVG, and then down here is where we handle the toggling with that button. So it looks at the button click and will toggle the tool on or off, because the line highlighting will not work when you're doing the brush tool. That's something we're going to try and work on, is trying to get that to work without changing the tool, just because it'd be a little cleaner But for the time being, or if this is how it ends up staying, it's not a huge deal. As long as we might want to just add some verbiage to about how to use all the graphs and all the functionalities, because for someone that's never used the site before. And then this is the actual zoom function. It takes the extent of the zoom from the brush and integrates that into the data, finds what data that matches up with, and redraws the lines and with some transitions and weight durations for the animation. And then update graph handles the changing of the CSV files for when you add the more data when you click one of those update buttons. Vertical lines very much the same there, so that's where that is. And someone that did a lot of work with the database was Derek. He was working on getting all the old data imported, which I know proved more difficult than it should have been to do without disturbing the current site, because the backups were not really there that we could get at, and then for some reason when we were using their live database, we weren't getting full exports from it, and it was only giving us certain data at a time. So that's what he's been working on a lot is getting our old data. So right now the data that we're working with that on our database that we're using for everything on our server, that has about 2 months of data of the past data, and that's what we're working with currently for the CSV generation and everything, until we get it up to live. We're getting there on that. I think there's somewhere around a year's worth of data, or maybe 2 that are that the current site has. I think that's how long it's been live, at least consecutively, or full implementation. I think it's a little over a year. So that's about how much data we're working with, and it does. The data points come in once a second for each constellation. You get the vertical position error, the horizontal position error, and then as we can see, if we look here, you get some of these DOP values. Like I said, I'm not as knowledgeable on the GPS stuff. That's something Austin was working on mostly. He knew the most about that stuff. So I still have some research to do about what all these points mean, but we can certainly visualize them one way or another with that. So this is one of the more in-depth pages that we will be recreating on our site. We will be making graphs, or maybe not exact copies, because we've been working with our client for this project is Professor Brosh, and he is we're working with him trying to get what's going to be the most useful from someone that works with this type of data and knows what's useful, how it's going to be helpful to people that would be using this site, because this site is going to be mostly for someone that's in the industry. We don't really anticipate too many lay users using this site, but so it'll usually be industry professionals that are interested in this type of data, or someone that's got a personal interest. I know he got some input from one of the conferences he went to, talk to some people about things that we could do to make it better, and how we could make all the data more useful. That's something else we're going to implement, is this data download feature. It was implemented on the old site, however, since I've been working on this project, it has not worked. So that's one of our next projects, is going to be just getting all the data into a nice readable format. I'm not sure how we want to do that. I'd probably just CSVs for import into Excel easily. But that's something else where we have to talk with him more about what's going to be the most useful for someone that's going to be actually using this site and this data in their work. So I just tried to log into our server so I could show a little bit of the daily generated CSV. So like I said, that's all on the server since that's where our database is housed. And unfortunately, I was not able to connect to it. SSH was not connecting to it, so I'm not able to show that. So next, I will show this file. This is just a little Python script that will generate user-generated CSVs for like user selectable data. This file was written by Derek. He was working on the user generated CSVs while I worked on the server side stuff. So here I haven't looked at this file too much, but he's for each point we're getting the data for the east and north is how in our structure is where the horizontal and vertical errors are. So that's what it's selected as in our database, and he's got user timestamps in here, whereas on the server side one we were using current date for now. It's actually getting passed from this file just because it was something from Express was that date time, so that or actually Node, I think. So I did that in this file, just passed it over to the file generation or the CSV generator, and for that, so that's using the current time, getting a day's worth of data, and then here is going to be all user selectable. So this will be for the client side, or for the user generated stuff, not that's independent for each user. So this is where all that file generation will happen. So I think that covers pretty much everything I wanted to talk about for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching. And check back in a little bit. This will be the site. This GNSPerformanceMonitor.com will be the site our final production version will end up on. Once it's done, probably sometime mid next semester is when we're going to try and make the switch. We think we can be done at that point, enough to make the switch and get everything onto the new version. So that's it. Thanks.